Re-ranking the football card investment report, and who are we missing? I want to make the football card investment report at nooffseason.com the most valuable for our members and our premium subscribers. So let's try to break this down as efficiently as possible. I know you've looked this over, so I won't read off the rankings, but I'll let you kind of take it away here and let me know where you think we generally have things right and where we generally need to make some adjustments here, or specifically need to make some adjustments rather.
Yeah, it's tough. So I guess it's important for me to ask, like when I'm looking at your football card rankings, I think it's more geared towards longer term investing, right?
We look at about 6 to 12 month window, yeah. And
Okay.
that's a little bit, when you upgrade to the premium version, it gets a little different because when you upgrade to the premium version, audience, if you haven't already, you can save 20% by using the promo code no offseason, and you will get more of a strategic breakdown about what to do with that player. And so the rankings themselves are available to anyone for free, right? When you go to nooffseason.com. And so they are more of a 6 to 12 month window. But then when you go into each investment report and you read the full report from a premium version, you might read about a guy like Jalen Hurts at number 13 overall. And in the play section, it's going to tell you something like, here's the exact cards we think you should buy and why, and here's exactly when we think you should sell him, right? So, yeah, that's the distinction, is that the rankings themselves, I think, are more like a long-term outlook, but the actual play can get very short-term.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So, yeah, obviously Tom Brady got to be the GOAT. I like this Lamar Jackson play at number 2. I mean, because of his potential ceiling. I think that sounds about right from the entry price point that you can get into him at, and his ceiling. It makes sense. Patrick Mahomes, he's a modern day GOAT for reasons that that we talked about before. Dak Prescott at number 4, the market size, the upside is there. With number 5 at Russell Wilson. I might move Russell Wilson to number 4 and Dak to number 5. And you've got Herbert at number 6, which I like that play. I think it's a big year for the Chargers. I know that there's a lot of polarizing opinions between the Chargers making it to the Super Bowl over the Bengals. What if we saw a Bengals-Chargers AFC Championship game? That would be nuts.
Yeah, that would be amazing for, I think, a lot of people in the card market who have invested heavily in Burrow and Herbert. So I would not hate that for the hobby, that's for sure.
I love the short-term flip potential. Trevor Lawrence, we talked about that. You got Deshaun Watson at number 8. And we still have not. They were supposedly supposed to have a league suspension hearing for him on Tuesday, and unless I've missed it, I have not got the alert of how long he's going to be suspended for. Like, a lot of people are like, "Oh, 20 cases have been settled," but there's still 4 sexual assault harassment cases out there. That's like still a lot, And the league was supposed to have, they're pushing to. But all the reports from, I was a guy from Wall Street Journal that I read, another guy that I follow, fantasy analyst from Fantasy Live, Pete Overzet, they said everything that they're reading and buying into is that there's going to be a 1-year suspension for Deshaun Watson pushed down because they're looking to make an example out of him because it's become quite the public mockery, So it's tough for me to buy into him at all until I get a clear understanding of how long he's going to be suspended for. Because if he's suspended for a year, I'm just going to wait till October, November, and try and buy into him then for a hype cycle around the draft when it could really heat up for Deshaun Watson.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's a huge adjustment I think we probably need to make then, because we do have him ranked super high based on his pricing from the offseason and then him actually getting moved to Cleveland being a big deal. So I think that's probably something we need to take a look at. And then from there, we've got Burrow, Allen, Lance, and Jones. We talked about a little bit about those guys on your show last week. That to me is kind of like a tier that just screams overpriced. How do you feel about those four specifically? Do you disagree on that?
Um, I agree mostly, but I am really like on the fence with Joe Burrow because there are a lot of signs and just writing on the wall that Joe Burrow could be right back and in the thick of it at the Super Bowl this year, and it's hard for me to discount his intangible assets that he does have, the leadership traits that he has, the things that he does off the field and on the field with his teammates. It's almost if there was one guy that was super young that was tempted to overpay on just to get in on some of his cards, it would probably be Joe Burrow or Justin Herbert, one of those guys. So yeah, but I do agree that Josh Allen, I'd flip him honestly, just because man, I see this tragedy striking them again in the playoffs, but hey, you never know. They could actually, they've got the roster to be in the Super Bowl. I just, now they lose Brian Daboll's their offensive coordinator, so who a lot of people like. You talk to a lot of NFL experts. He's on the Giants now, so it'll be interesting to see what their offense looks like this year. I would add Stephon Diggs to this top 30 list, though. I noticed I don't think you have Stephon Diggs on here.
I do not.
And Stephon Diggs should be on here. He's in his prime right now, and he absolutely has like number one overall wide receiver. The Bills do throw the ball at the second highest rate in the NFL last year. I expect them to continue to do that. And Stephon Diggs is just an elite separator, like getting open. Every other wide receiver in the league wants to be Stephon Diggs in that department. Like they all look up to him because he has been so good at getting open, kind of like Devontae Adams. You put him right next to that. He's got that kind of upside potential. And I don't think that his prices necessarily reflect that. I still think his rookie ticket autos, like getting those for like 50, $60, I still think are, if you can get them at that price, are a very good investment. I think Stephon Diggs is the kind of guy who'll end up going down a Hall of Famer. And he's kind of hasn't quite made it to that level of like a Devontae Adams or DeAndre Hopkins household name status. But I mean, there's a high probability we could be talking about him in that category if we're not already after this season.
Yeah, that's a good point. He did have like a classic catch in Minnesota in the playoffs several years back. And so he's in a position to continue to have those kinds of catches in big games moving forward, even if the Bills don't make it to the Super Bowl, with a lot of people think they will. But even if they don't, he's going to be in the playoffs most likely, and he's going to be in a position where he's the go-to guy. So I think that I'm glad you brought up Stephon Diggs. We're definitely missing him, so we're going to add him to the Sports Card Investment Report. And everyone, if you love what Andy's saying right now, he actually does contribute to most of our football write-ups at nooffseason.com. So he's not only the host of the Football Card Strategy Show with us, but he also writes for us. And then, of course, runs his own Football Card Quest business on YouTube and Patreon. If you want to upgrade over there, it's definitely going to be worth your money. But there's a couple other guys I want to ask you about. So Kyler Murray is a guy that I've heard your co-host Carter talk about. Also, you guys have talked about Matt Ryan and another guy. Let's see. We've talked about most of these guys already today, but I did want to get your quick perspective on Derek Carr and Tua, just in relation to where they're ranked. Are they right where you would put them, or would you move them up or down?
Yeah, so I mostly agree with Carter on selling Tua heading into the season on this hype of getting Tyreek Hill and everything. I'd sell Tua heading into the season. They also have a tough opening schedule. Derek Carr, I mean, Vegas is predicting them to actually be the worst performing team in that AFC West division, but man, they have some sneaky upside. They really do. They've got some sneaky upside. And I think this could easily be a career year for Derek Carr. So from that perspective alone, like I do like Derek Carr's investment. I think Devontae Adams is going to be big for his numbers. And he really, man, if he could make a playoff run, we could absolutely see a big increase in demand for his cards. Plus, like last year, we saw demand increase when he was in MVP consideration through the first 3 weeks. They were winning. He was also throwing the ball a lot, and he completes a lot of his passes. So Davante Adams is going to help that in that department out a lot. So, I think in relations, I'd maybe bump him up 1 or 2 spots there. Maybe over one of those rookies. Like,
all right.
Yeah.
Last guy, Kyler Murray. I see obviously a lot of, things lining up when you talk about the number 1 overall pick a few years ago. You talk about his college career, the talent level, and then the team that he's on. I mean, everything kind of lines up for this guy. Does he have a shot to potentially come out of the NFC as the guy?
Yeah, I think a wild card spot. It's hard for me to see the Rams not getting back to the playoffs, right, out of the NFC West. Like, I don't see people beating them in their own division. So I think they could grab a wild card spot, though, over like the 49ers. And Kyler Murray, definitely upside. A lot of what I like to do in football card investing is similar to fantasy in the sense that if I'm investing in Kyler Murray, I want to stack him with a wide receiver on his team, like Marquise Brown. They just added Marquise Brown to the roster, former teammate at Oklahoma with Kyler Murray. They had over 1,000 receiving yards in college, kind of like Davante Adams and Derek Carr. So I think if you're investing in Kyler Murray, which you can at a discount right now, because he's pretty much like it's just got a little bit of a stain on his reputation with the whole like kind of holdout thing this offseason and the whole kind of immaturity thing that he's been dealing with reports of him tuning out teammates or just always being frustrated on the field with this kind of like this mean mugging look that Kyler Murray's always got, where, it's totally opposite when you look at a guy like Joe Burrow, right? And Cliff Kingsbury has become notorious for kind of flaming out in the playoffs and the whole way they ended their season last year. You can absolutely get Kyler Murray at a discount. He's got QB1 upside. If you invest in him, I think you should stack him with DeAndre Hopkins and Marquise Brown, potentially throw in some Rondale Moore from 2021 Prism set. Go buy you Zach Ertz, because Zach Ertz is like famous off the NFL field. He's got a Super Bowl ring and everything. So, invest in Zach Ertz, who's a Hall of Fame tight end. It's kind of like investing in Gronk, more or less, like I want to say poor man's Gronk, but it's just like not quite as popular as Gronk, but he still is popular. He's got that reputation.
Absolutely. Andy, phenomenal job on Football Card Strategy Show episode 3. We could keep going and going, but we need to plug one more thing. Let's talk real quick about the fantasy football draft guide you and I are putting together. That's going to come out in a few weeks here at nooffseason.com, the Quest Dominator draft guide with Andy and I. We basically wanted to team up to give more fun content to our audience and give everybody an opportunity to learn about how they can win their fantasy football leagues. So how excited are you for that, Andy?
I'm incredibly excited. This is something I've always wanted to do, Paul, as a fantasy football draft kit. And so we're going to be doing some mock drafts. We're also going to give some little insights for every single player in the top 300 players in the league. And I'm excited for it. I can't wait to see what you put together in the web app. I can't wait for us to do a couple mock drafts, because I've already done several dynasty startup drafts this summer. I've also done probably 100 best ball drafts at this point. So my ADP knowledge, like we can get to pretty much any round of fantasy draft, and I know where guys are going. So I kind of can help people out there find value in their fantasy drafts and put together a powerhouse roster. I won one of my leagues last year. I made it to the playoffs in the other, and I'm doing even more leagues this year. And I've won my home league twice in the past 10 years. So, and I'm always in the thick of it. So, I just to give you a reference, like I take it very seriously, and I think we can help you build some seriously powerful fantasy football squads this year to dominate your friends and win some money.
Everybody who is a premium member of nooffseason.com Sports Card Investment Report will automatically have access to the draft guide, the Quest Dominator draft kit at No Offseason, but it will be sold as its own standalone product. So don't worry, we're going to continue to provide sports card content, number one. But Andy and I are both passionate about fantasy football. That's kind of what got him started in cards. And nooffseason.com back from 2007 to 2011 was a pretty strong fantasy football website, and I've rebooted it as a sports card investing site. So this will be fun for both of us. And before I take us to the outro, Andy, I want to take one more question from Toa, who is a loyal audience member. And I think this is a good question. When investing, how are you separating the hype from the actual real factors you want to invest in? Is simply flipping in and out of the hype and not taking the chance for volatility. And I think this is a little bit different than a dynasty fantasy football league, because while you do not technically have an asset in dynasty fantasy football, you also aren't necessarily spending your actual real money on a waiver pickup or a draft pick outside of like the league entry fee, or if your league actually bids real money on waivers. Outside of those two scenarios, I think it's a little bit different, because it's in this regard, it's a little bit less risky to prospect for dynasty than it is to prospect for football cards. So how do you do this, Andy?
Yeah, I think it's really important to remember that it is definitely harder to sell cards than it is to buy them. And so I'm not like, I don't ever want to get myself into a situation where I feel like I'm getting greedy on a card. And so I try to always think in terms of, when I buy this card, I really should be listing it kind of right away, and planning out like when I think the hype is going to be the highest. So like heading into the season, I will take 70 to 100% profit on a card, and take that capital back into my bankroll to invest it in November, because I see such a good buying window in November. So I think it's important to kind of take that into consideration as well, and understand that you can always buy back into a different card. You refresh your collection that way, put something new on the wall, and just continue to kind of feed off, like have the hobby fund your future investments, and to feed off of that. And definitely though, like from looking at their age apex and stuff, I definitely am looking at that. So running backs are even more of a short-term investment for me than quarterbacks. Wide receivers, some of them, I'm like wide receivers. I guess if there was one position I'm fine holding more long term, it would be them, because I know that from a week to week basis, all the wide receivers that I'm investing in may not have a lot of production. Their team may not be winning, but I know if I hold them long enough, they're going to be put in that situation where they do pop. Whether it's all the factors: new team, new quarterback upgrade, winning, big production, like top 5 production, playoffs, the whole 9 yards. So.
Yeah, I look at it similarly. Like, I think, to me, football card investing is a lot like playing daily fantasy football, but with just a larger margin for error. So, for example, I used to play a lot of FanDuel and DraftKings, and I'd get really excited about setting my lineup for that particular week and all the research I did, and like wanting to be right, and be able to have bragging rights and tell people that I won and all these things. And so I think that the calls I would make were generally always pretty successful within like a 2 to 3 week window, but not necessarily that 1 week. And so I think that if you look at football card investing in that regard, like let's say you're following a guy like Ramondre Stevenson, who we talked about earlier, and you are confident that based on things you're reading from the beat writers, based on things you saw during the game, based on maybe some insights that you're picking up from Andy and other football card shows that go deep. Okay, this guy is going to break out at some point within the next 2 to 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and you're looking at the schedule, right, and different things like that. I think this is where football card investing, you can get really good at it if you kind of do what Andy said, which is like map out your plan. It's going to be easy to buy it. It's not going to be easy to sell it. So what you probably want to do is, if you can buy a card, try to get it at the lowest possible price. Obviously, try to make sure it's a card that people are going to want to buy, aka parallel, serial number, color match, autograph, something, right? And then listing it in a buy it now or best offer format, or like a 10-day auction on eBay over an elongated period of time, something like that. Giving yourself a 2 to 4 week play during the NFL regular season, I think is fun. I think what's super hard is to try to pick a quarterback that's going to win the Super Bowl. I think that that's the least likely thing to possibly do. And I think to pick a fantasy player, rookie patch auto, as like a dynasty fantasy sleeper, I also think is a little bit of a miss. I've mentioned Kenny Gainwell several times in my content. So Kenny Gainwell is like my example of that. Like, don't love some guy for fantasy and then think that, okay, he's going to be a PPR flex super stud in 2 to 3 years. I just know it. And then go out and buy his rookie patch auto for $30. Like, there's a good chance no one's going to want that rookie patch auto for anywhere near $30. So that's Toa. That's kind of my outlook for football card investing. And I do think football card investing is definitely a lot more intricate than basketball. It's definitely different than baseball prospecting. It's definitely different than soccer F1. Football, I think, is the shortest window and the smallest margin for error. And I call it kind of the riskiest. Andy's really good at synthesizing the data into recommendations for a lot of guys. But I think when it comes down to it, he's very strategic with what he buys, and then like not. Andy, you strike me as someone who's just like not emotional about selling things, which I think that's how you have to be if you want
Yeah.
to make money on it. So
Yeah. I do have a PC though, and I have gotten emotional about selling a nice Mike Evans card and a nice Tom Brady card. But the prices were way too good for me to turn down, and I just knew like I'll be able to get back in. You know, it's not there's more cards out there, you know, and I'll be able to get back in. And so I mean, like going back to Toa's question, real quick, just to hit on this is like separate, like, because I don't think I actually like answered this question directly in terms of separating hype from actual real factors you want to invest in. Like, the first thing I do is I go and look at what their measurables are, like, and look at what they did in college, because if they weren't successful in college and they didn't test well and they didn't get drafted with any capital, then chances are they're never going to get that opportunity in the NFL. They're not going to perform at a high level. So unless there's some external story outside of the NFL that's driving their values up, kind of like Pat Tillman being a war hero, then there's not really anything in terms of like investment value there for me. But if they were a good athlete, they had good college numbers, even if they went to a good school and maybe they got picked in the 4th round, and maybe they're buried on a depth chart and they're not getting an opportunity right now, those are the guys that I think you can buy into at the lowest that have the highest upside, especially the younger they are, because once they do get that opportunity, they have the athletic profile to go out and make the most of it and actually execute with that opportunity. And now all of a sudden you're sitting on a gold mine. If you got that listed in a buy it now format and they're popping off, you're ready, man. People are just going on there. They don't want to wait for auctions. This guy's going nuts. He's about to become the next generational athlete. He came out of nowhere. Boom, you got him. You know, you're listed. They reach, they buy your card, and you make, 3 to 5x, in some scenarios even more than that. I've had some scenarios where I've made even more than that doing that.
anything else you want to add for us, Andy, before I take us to the outro?
No, man, this has been a great show. I know we've covered a lot of players. I'll plug my latest video. I did a deep dive on the beginning of last season. I looked at the guys who performed the best coming out of the gate last season. I studied Russell Wilson's opening schedule. I studied Sam Darnold, what happened to him, and I studied the sales transaction on their graded cards week-to-week basis through the first 3 weeks of the 2020 season, and then made some projections for this year. Check that out. Other than that, man, I look forward to coming back on here again with you real soon, and then we'll release the draft guide and do some mock drafts and all that stuff. Man, I'm fired up, Paul.
Yeah, same here, man. Everybody check out Andy at Football Card Quest. Definitely check out that video. Football Card Quest on YouTube, that is. And show him some love. Andy Cason, host of the Football Card Quest cast, as well as the Football Card Strategy Show part of the nooffseason.com sports card content network. And that is home of the Sports Card Investment Report, where you can get upgrade to the premium version. It's $19.99 a month, and you can save 20% using the promo code NOOFFSEASON at checkout. Everybody, this has been episode 3, the long-awaited episode 3 of the Football Card Strategy Show. We're going to be back. We're going to be back with a lot more football card strategy shows because it is football card season. It's going to be football card season from now through probably September, and then there's going to be a little bit of a dip, but we're going to keep the content coming strong. Everybody, thanks for watching and listening. If you missed the live stream, we hope you check us out on Spotify and Apple. For those of you listening on Spotify and Apple, you can hit up Andy and I with your thoughts on the show on Twitter. I'm at No Offseason Card, and Andy is at FB Card Quest. Is that right?
FB Card Quest on Twitter.
FB Card Quest. All right, awesome. Everybody, thanks and have a great day.